wife lost a husband, and I lost a friend. Mayor Mitchell was a fighter for the city, and I will not rest until this killer is found.
Sometimes in the morning, I have to force myself to remember everything that happened. I wish I could say I'm making a difference, but I don't know. Something in the way. Murder, robberies, assault. 2 years later, they're all up. And now this. The city's eating itself.
What's your memory of the Riddler back in the Batman movie from 2022? Did you remember him as scary, unsettling, like the Zodiac killer type things? The reason I ask is because fast forward 3 years later to 2025 and beyond, the recent history shows us so much parallels to the Riddler in that film. And at the time, the Riddler in that film seemed like something cartoony almost. You know, he ended up being a podcaster. Oh my goodness, that's crazy. He ended up having a Twitter. Wow. It was a curveball because it was kind of silly, but it made sense. Enter present day, and now you have names like Luigi Mangione, like Thomas Matthew Crooks. Their impact on society was significant, to say the least. So as I was rewatching this movie, the Riddler stood out to me again, but in a different light. Or I guess the absence of light with how dark this film was. If you don't remember, the Batman stars Robert Pattinson, where he gives us a younger, angrier Bruce Wayne. Someone still figuring out how to channel his pain into justice. And it's clear by the message he gives in the beginning of the film, where he calls himself Vengeance, that he's not all there yet with the Batman we've grown to know and love in other movies and in cartoons. And though the Riddler was not the only antagonist in this film, we did primarily follow him, and from the moment he appears, we see that the Riddler is not playing any games, with his first act being the brutal unaliving of Gotham's mayor. And that sets the dark, broody tone for the rest of the movie. But what made the Riddler so good in that film was not just his crimes, but his methods behind all those crimes. For example, in the film, we see him leave cryptic riddles at every scene, and each one gives hints and peels back the layers of Gotham City's rotten core. More precisely, the individuals he targeted almost directly relate to our real world events. So, if you haven't hit that subscribe button and like button, you definitely should. Helps out the channel a bunch, and if you like movies like me, you're gonna like the other videos on this channel. I'm just saying, I think the Batman would have subscribed. But in the Batman, the Riddler doesn't wield power with brute force. He uses intellect, the internet, and public discontent. Does that sound familiar? Enter Luigi Mangione. Or Mangione. I don't know how to pronounce it. Mangione it is. Mangione turned his rage against a healthcare CEO, believing he was fighting the system. And actually, before we get too deep into this, I want to make it clear that I'm not making any claims or statements. I just like this movie, and I noticed a lot of parallels in today's world. So with that being said, the Riddler taps into this same kind of anger. The idea of being invisible to the world until you make your voice impossible to ignore. It's a terrifyingly accurate portrayal of how people can channel frustration into destruction. Destruction that the Riddler caused with his army, and that army of his did not grow in the shadows, did not grow at training camps. It grew online. His online supporters and people that would watch his stream. Platforms like the ones we use every day have given rise to communities where anger and discontent can thrive unchecked. And I know I'm talking about a movie right now, but just think of 4chan and similar platforms that have been breeding grounds for real world attacks. So the Riddler shows us the dark side of digital connection and how it can unite people not for good, also for destruction, which is dangerous in our time. And I know what you're thinking, well, Luigi didn't have an army and do everything that the Riddler did in the movie. And that's true. I mean, yes, we are talking about a film here, but we have seen similar things happen before from online communities, such as the January 6th protest at the White House is a good example of this. And there's plenty more parallels that we could make, but I really like that in the Batman film that this side of the Riddler really made Batman be the world's greatest detective that we had not seen completely before. We always saw a focus on his strength, on his abilities, on his tech, the gadgets he has, and even with his money, as we mainly saw in the Batman vs. Superman films and all that. So seeing the Batman actually need to decipher all his cryptic messages to prove himself as the world's greatest detective was great to see on screen, and I think the film did it amazingly. And this was accompanied by many other well-written antagonist Batman villains that we had seen before, but not like this. Catwoman shined here. It was a Catwoman redemption, in my opinion. It really gave depth to her character, but without pushing the limits of feeling like the unsufferable human lead girl boss like Captain Marvel or She-Hulk did, that got pretty poor reviews in the box office and on IMDb. In contrast, the Catwoman in this film was highly beloved character and very well written. Not to mention that the Penguin got his own HBO spin-off show because of how beloved that character was in this film. Now, the biggest criticism I usually hear, maybe not criticism is the word for it, but the biggest comparison is the Joker, because everyone just knows the Batman and the Joker to be like two sides of one coin. So anytime the Riddler's brought up, riddles, jokes, kind of the same, but this movie made a perfect distinction between the two, which is what this film needed, especially after the success, which is something that this film really needed, especially after the 2019 Joker film starring Joaquin Phoenix came out and hit $1 billion in the box office. Let me say that again, $1 billion. I'm sure if they made a sequel to that film, it would get $2 billion. Okay, never mind. While we're on the topic of the Joker character, I would like to point out that whenever that movie came out, the ending of that film led to the Joker being praised across the streets of Gotham and by people all around the city. But he had committed a pretty bad crime. He unalived someone on live TV, something that everybody saw. And at the time, it was crazy to think that would people really rally behind someone like that? But once again, enter Luigi Mangione. Enter Luigi Mangione. We've seen his support grow on platforms like TikTok and X, which, like I said, back whenever the Joker came out, it was crazy to think that people would actually do something like that and rally behind that. But we kind of had the exact same thing happen now. And we just saw support from the whole world. So I think without a question, we are on the most whack, craziest timeline right now. Because I have not even mentioned the craziest parallel with the real world that this movie had. In the movie, The Batman with the Riddler, we see that his targets are really calculated, and we see at the end of the film that the Riddler even thought the Batman was working with him because these targets were people that the Riddler believed were causing harm through the corruption of Gotham, such as first target, Mayor Don Mitchell Jr., Gotham sitting mayor at the time at the start of the film, and he ended up being corrupt. We had number 2, Police Commissioner Pete Savage, which is also a corrupt police commissioner. Number 3, District Attorney Gil Colson, who is corrupt as well, and he serves the interests of Carmine Falcone, the city's crime boss, which leads to his next target, Carmine Falcone. He's Gotham's most powerful crime lord, controlling the city's criminal network and even some of its government. And lastly, Bruce Wayne as a potential target, who is Gotham's wealthiest heir and son of Thomas Wayne, a revered philanthropist. Which out of the 5 targets, he was the exception because Bruce Wayne is actually Batman. But in the Riddler's mind, what all these people had in common is they are the city's elites that are profiting from Gotham City's corruption and poverty. Now, does that sound familiar to you at all? Let me know what you think in the comments about this, and if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and check out these other videos on the channel where we cover topics just like this one. I love movies. If you do too, you'll like this channel. See you guys in the next video. Jesus loves y'all. Bye-bye.